This is a very special meeting where we're getting together to recognize the victims of domestic terrorism by our government. We're going to be joined by some of those who are defending some of these victims, besides our two guest speakers who are in the fight for lawfare victims. I'd like to recognize my own criminal defense attorney, John Freeman. John, where are you? Could you stand up? So, John and I were just talking. I haven't seen John in a year. When we were in pre-trial together for 6.5 days. And I think John could sense that I was a little bit tense, and I enjoyed the fact that he was drawing cartoons of the witnesses and passing them to me.
That was supposed to be attorney-client privilege.
But no, aside from that, which I really appreciated, he did an excellent job of exposing their deception. Yes. So we're going to get started here. I'd like everybody to stand. Thank you.
Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Fill us with your grace, Lord, as we make decisions that might affect the hearts and minds of others. And continue to remind us that all that we do here today, all that we accomplish, is for the pursuit of truth, for the greater glory of you, and for the service of humanity. We ask all these things in your name. Amen.
Thank you, Roseanne. Okay, so I'd like a round of applause for everyone that has helped put on this meeting, because there's just so many people involved in this one. I also want to thank Americans for Prosperity for being a sponsor, and Axe My Tax for being a sponsor of tonight's event. If you're looking to sign the Axe My Tax petition, there are petitions on the table to the side of the room, and if you haven't signed that yet and that's what you want to do, that's where they are. This meeting is being videotaped by our generous videographer, Ken Garner. It will be available to view on Lakes Area Tea Party Facebook page and Michigan Conservative Coalition Facebook page, probably in a couple days. Ken?
Yeah.
Yeah, he does a great job. He has to do edits and things. So don't miss out on this fun way to celebrate. I think it's the 250th year of our military. So now I want to recognize two people that came the farthest distance to this event. Gentlemen, could you stand up? I have two, all the way from Rogers City, Michigan. No, wait, it gets better. I have a couple prizes for you guys for your determination to make it this far, so thank you so much. Okay, so we have a packed agenda tonight, so we're going to get right to it, all right? So we're going to move on to our speakers. I'd like to introduce Kevin Kijewski. He's one of the attorneys defending elector Cliff Frost against his lawfare charges. Cliff is one of the 2020 Trump electors being charged with 8 felonies. Kevin has also taken it upon himself, and I think you might have been motivated by some of this,
Certain person here.
to run for Attorney General in 2026.
Well, it's great to be with you. I'm not the primary speaker, but I'm just going to talk for maybe 2, 3, 4 minutes. If I get to 5, tell me to be quiet, okay? So first, all the alternate electors, could you please stand? I know we got one here, we have one here. Any others? Give these people a round of applause. What the Attorney General is doing to all of you, frankly, is criminal, and that's sort of a metaphorical thing I could say right now, and perhaps that could be a real thing later. We'll see. Because when you take a look at the Attorney General, what she has been doing to all 16 alternate electors is to try to criminalize free speech. And frankly, have you guys seen the video of Dana Nessel talking about this case? It's amazing. You can see it on CNN, you can read about it in the Detroit News. She actually was on a podcast or something with some liberal group in California where she said, hey, when it comes to these alternate electors, they truly believe that Trump won. If the Attorney General is saying that, then any of these folks actually never committed a crime, because that negates the specific intent that you need to have regarding any type of crime of fraud, duress, or anything else regarding what these guys have been doing. They haven't done anything. They just wanted to express themselves and sort of redress their grievances, have the government redress their grievances, and then what ends up happening? 2 years after the fact, they get charged with all these crimes. Our freedoms are protected. Previously, I was the superintendent of schools for the Archdiocese of Detroit. My boss happened to have a nice big mitre, he's the Archbishop. And during COVID, we had the first shutdown that happened of our schools, and everyone's like, okay, what's going on? But then she attempted to shut down our schools a second time. And I'm like, hell no, you're not doing that. So we filed suit against the governor in November of 2020, and we got her to back down, and she lost. And the best thing about it, the governor thought, hey, when it came to all of this, I sort of saved face, because she, before a decision came down in the Western District of Michigan federal courts, she decided, I think I'm going to lose. So she had an impromptu press conference, and she said that the evidence and the science has changed. I'm like, in a month, the evidence and the science has changed? Really? That's amazing. Oh, she just didn't want to lose, all right? Anyway, when it comes to my run for Attorney General, I really want to do 3 things. Number 1, I want to make sure that we're going to be secure. We actually prosecute real crime for a change. So you take a look at the last 8 years, crime has actually gone up. Violent crime has gone up. We have to actually dedicate people to prosecute these crimes. That has not been going on. You take a look at the Attorney General's office. Since the time that she has taken office, FTEs, or full-time employees, the head count went up by 50%. But what is she doing? She's not prosecuting real crime. She's going after these 3. She's going after people that wanted to keep their hair salons and their businesses and their restaurants and their schools and their churches open. She wants to go after people that, frankly, don't agree with her political ideology. And then when it comes to the Flint water crisis, just inexplicable what she did there. She dropped all these prosecutions, all of them. And then the statute of limitations ran out. Darn it. How does that happen? Was that purposeful, or are you just stupid? I don't know. But the thing is, though, we have to bring back competence to the office of the Attorney General. The second thing we have to do is to make sure that we restore freedoms. I don't want people touching your guns. I don't want people telling your churches what to do. I don't want people telling you what to do with your own property. We need to make sure that we restore our freedoms here. And third, we have to protect and really safeguard the integrity of our election system and our faith in government. And right now, I take a look at Jocelyn Benson, and I'm just laughing because she found this Chinese student at the University of Michigan, right? This Chinese student that voted. Well, she didn't find the student. The guy actually turned himself in. It's not like they had Sherlock Holmes on the case or something. And then what ends up happening? Well, then he got this low cash bond, no GPS tether, they had no idea, and then he flew the coop in January, February of this year. And now we just find out about it. Oops. Really? Incompetence. Absolute incompetence. And then we find out that 15 people voted in the 2024 election, 15 people. And they were not U.S. citizens. But Jocelyn Benson doesn't say how she found out or where these people voted or anything else. Doesn't say a damn word about that. Well, we need to do an actual criminal investigation as to how these people voted. We need to make sure that we don't have the same mistakes repeated. And if we find people, I don't care at what level of government nor political party, we're going to actually hold people accountable. We need to do that. So here in Michigan, I want to just thank you for your support. If you want to learn a little bit more about me, go to kevinformi.com. And I look forward to meeting a lot of you probably after the event today and other events in the future. I'm looking forward to actually our other two speakers, a lot more important. So thank you so much, and Marion, thank you so much for the opportunity.
So on deck, we have our next speaker. And I'm sure everyone here knows that we've had 3 days of rioting in Los Angeles over the past weekend that have resulted in, from what I was reading, less than 60 people being arrested over the weekend. Over the next 3 years, will the FBI investigate and hunt down these hundreds of people who were rioting? Will they knock down their doors and arrest them as an insurrectionist? I don't know. Our next speaker has a disturbing tale to tell. In light of these protest riots happening across LA, and they're being defended by the left as mostly peaceful protests, right? Ryan Kelly was charged and convicted for committing a federal crime while attending the J6 rally in Washington, D.C. There's probably no bigger example of lawfare than the one waged against this former gubernatorial candidate. He joins us here tonight to tell us his story and the events that sent him to federal prison. So please give a warm welcome to Ryan Kelly.
The federal government's watching right now. Somebody from the Biden administration is, Ryan's out there talking again.
Ryan Kelly, can I just play that? I forgot.
Oh, you got a video to play? Oh man, we're in serious trouble now.
We turn to another major story in our state, a stunning development in the race for governor. Republican candidate Ryan Kelly arrested by the FBI and facing charges. Cell phone video capturing the FBI on the scene at Kelly's home in Allendale, just west of Grand Rapids. Agents also confirming to 7 Action News they executed a search warrant at the house. Federal court documents showing photos of Kelly at the insurrection detailing what they say is his involvement, and new video just into our newsroom showing Kelly released from the federal courthouse late this afternoon. A cheering crowd of supporters surrounding him, and this all happening as we are just hours away from the primetime congressional hearings on the January 6th attack at the U.S. Capitol. 7 Action News reporter Kim Russell is live with more information about Kelly's arrest. And Kim, what exactly led to the charges here?
I'm holding in my hands the criminal complaint and court documents that detail minute by minute where the feds say that Republican candidate for governor Ryan Kelly was on January 6th. And the feds also providing video and picture evidence they collected.
This is war, baby!
This is video the FBI shared in a statement of facts filed in court saying it shows Republican candidate for governor Ryan Kelly in a hat with a black and white flag. Clip by clip, investigators say reporters and protesters captured video that shows Kelly in a mob forcing its way violently past police. Capitol Police can be seen trying to push back, spraying pepper spray, but investigators say Kelly is moving with the crowd against police. Federal investigators say images collected as evidence show him tearing down a temporary structure next to people, removing police barricades, and video shows him taking pictures of blood. The feds say based on this evidence, they arrested him and charged Kelly with knowingly entering a restricted building without authority and while there disruptive conduct, engaging in physical violence against person or property, and willfully injuring property of the United States. This is video from this morning in Allendale, Michigan, as the FBI raided his home in western Michigan while his children were home. Oakland University political science chair Professor Peter Trumbore says it's possible the charges will actually help Kelly get more support and name recognition in the race for the Republican nomination for governor.
I think being the full-throated Donald Trump MAGA candidate gives him a leg up in what is a pretty unspectacular field.
I reached out to Kelly's campaign for comment to hear his side. We're hoping to hear back. We'll have more ahead on 7 Action News at 6. Reporting live, Kim Russell, 7 Action News.
That's fine. Exciting to be here with you guys tonight. You know, I've been going all over the state telling parts of my story about what happened in regard to this January 6th case that the Biden administration brought against me. And it's been 3 years today. June 9th, 2022 was when I was arrested. 3 years ago today. Good day you picked for me to come out and talk about this. Let's talk a little bit about that day, because a few weeks prior to that, if you remember, in the state of Michigan, there was that whole signature debacle where there was 5 candidates that didn't make the ballot because of, we won't get into that story, but there was articles that started coming out after that Ryan Kelly is the lead candidate in the GOP primary. That was May 28th of 2022. June 9th of 2022, just a few days later, the FBI shows up at my house at 8 o'clock in the morning, whatever it was. I was making tacos. I have 6 kids. My one son, who's now 3, was just a few weeks old. 3 of my kids were sleeping still, and the FBI is pounding on my door. Misdemeanor charges. They had 30-some agents outside of my house. They all had their firearms. They were all geared up, ready to go. They had helicopters circling my house. And so they wanted to take me outside, right? They're going to arrest me. They're looking for plans. Mr. Kelly, we're here looking for plans of overthrowing the government. That's my reaction that I had too, right? But that's what they were serious. They were looking for plans. And they wanted to get my hat, they wanted to get my cell phone, and they wanted to get my jacket. And they took my shoes. Those were my walking shoes. I really liked those shoes. I had to deal with them for almost 3 years. But they brought me outside, they put me in the car, and they had to wake all my kids up, right? So my children are being woke up by FBI agents. And they're being walked out of the house. And my son, who at the time he was 4 years old, his name's Louis. And this is like Father of the Year type stuff. Just bear with me here a second, right? So he got woke up by the FBI, right? All these different FBI agents walking him out of the house. And he goes to the FBI agent, says he's rubbing his eyes. Go arrest Joe Biden. Don't arrest my dad. I didn't get to hear that, but my wife told me about that later. we still talk about it all the time, right? He's so proud of that too. He's like, they never would have arrested Joe Biden either, did they? So they take me, out of my house, put me in the car. They drive me down to the jail that's in Grand Rapids, and they shackle me, hands and feet, and throw me in a cell. Now, if you fast forward to just a few weeks back, you remember they arrested that judge over in Wisconsin, and CNN's on the TV talking about this is unprecedented. She had to stay in a holding tank for a few hours before her arraignment. I'm just watching this going, you people have no idea, do you? But they do have an idea. They're trying to manipulate the rest of our country. We're not going to talk about all of that, but it's not unprecedented. It happened to me. It happened to many other J6ers. I'm shackled. They carry me into the courtroom. Shackled, hands and feet. And they go through the whole thing, right? I plead not guilty. And then they walk me back out of the courtroom and they unshackle me. They're like, all right, have a good day. Huge threat, right? Huge threat. They wanted to put on the whole show. They wanted the headlines. They wanted gubernatorial candidate arrested on January 6 charges. Election interference is what it was. 100% they wanted to derail my gubernatorial campaign because I was the lead candidate. I was the one that was out working the campaign harder than any other candidate. And I was ready to do whatever it took to make sure that Gretchen Whitmer was not going to be our governor for a second term. And she was, right? They had to take me out. That was the whole point. They needed to take me out. They needed to plant seeds of doubt in the minds of voters to make sure they knew that Ryan Kelly was a criminal. I just got a message. I just made a TikTok video about just a little while ago about this being the 3-year anniversary. And even still now, some lady posted on it, are you able to run again for what they did to you? People, they didn't know, right? All you saw was all the stuff on TV, January 6th, defendants being sentenced to 20 years in prison, being sentenced to 10 years in prison. The stories over and over again that were being pounded into people's minds They wanted to arrest me so that I was tied in with all of that stuff. And what did I do? I never even went inside the Capitol building. I was nonviolent. I was outside of the Capitol building. Misdemeanor trespassing. People wonder, why did I plead guilty? Well, I was going to go to trial, but just a short time before my trial was going to start, I got a phone call from my attorney and said that, well, I just got a message from the U.S. attorney that if you don't take the plea deal, they're going to supersede, indict you, and charge you with felonies. And it's a rigged D.C. jury pool. Everyone, you know what the outcome is going to be. I was ready to fight it for misdemeanors, but I had to make a decision based on my family. I have 6 children. I have a wife that I love very much, and I had to make a decision. And my decision was, do now I want to face these felony charges that they're going to do whatever they have to do to make sure that something sticks. And I was facing a lot longer in prison based off what it is that they were going to do to me. So that's why I made that decision to take the misdemeanor trespassing charge and pled guilty to that. So we fast forward to the sentencing, right? And the government, so here's how it works, right? The government's going to put together a little memorandum, their sentencing memorandum, and then the defense puts theirs, they give it to the judge, and the judge reads over all this. So with the government memorandum, one of the big things they talked about was Mr. Kelly's Facebook posts. Here's what Mr. Kelly said about the 2020 election. Here's what Mr. Kelly said during the campaign about January 6th. Here's what Mr. Kelly said. Here's what Mr. Kelly said, not what he did. There was very little of what he did. Oh, he was outside of the Capitol building. He was screaming USA. Super big threat to the country. But it was all about what I said. And so the judge starts talking and he goes into all these different points. And he says, we didn't talk about this. I have the sentencing transcript. I have all of this written down. I have all of this in writing. The judge says, we didn't talk about this, but I think that you misused your platform as a candidate for elected office to lie and minimize what actually happened. And then he goes on to say that a lot of people voted for you. A lot of people supported you. A lot of people followed you. And you have a responsibility to not peddle falsehoods to them about January 6th being an FBI setup or whatever it is that you said. Now, up until now, he never even mentioned anything that I did, because he did start off by saying, we realized that you never went into the building, we realized that you were nonviolent, but all these things that you said and all these things that you did. And so then he goes on to continue saying that I agree with the government that a term of incarceration is necessary, but not for specific deterrent reasons. Well, wait a minute, I thought that's what a sentence is for, to deter someone from committing crimes. He says not for specific deterrent reasons. It's because we need to make an example out of people like you that things like this can never happen again. 60 days in federal prison, $5,000 fine, and 1 year of supervised release. I was put in prison for what I said about January 6th and what I said about the 2020 election, not what it is that I did on January 6th. Wild times we live in, and you guys know exactly where we're coming from. The weaponization of the federal and the state government. And now you talk about the riots that are going on out there, and it's mostly peaceful protests. We're going to stand up for these people waving all these foreign flags. And this is why the Democrats lost. You would think that they would back away from some of these radical policies when Donald Trump won all 7 swing states and the popular vote by a lot, not by a little, by a lot. You'd think they'd back off some of these wacky left-wing policies. What do? They double down. Keep going, guys, keep going, because the average, everyday American citizen sees what's happening. They understand what's going on, and I think that the pendulum is starting to swing back the other direction. And that's exciting because our state and our country needs common sense. We need actual leadership in our state and in our country. People who want to stand up for our constitutional republic and not this whack job, liberal utopia that these people are trying to create. Obviously that was rejected in 2024. We'll reject it again in 2026 and beyond. So it's drive yourself to prison day. It was. I had to self-surrender, right? They let me self-surrender. It's such a huge thing. Oh, you can go ahead home. We'll call you when it's time to come. So they showed up at my house a few days after Thanksgiving in 2023, and they said, you need to report to Oxford Federal Prison in Wisconsin, north of Madison, whatever, next Monday or whatever it was. So I had to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning. You know, I say bye to my wife, and I say bye to my kids, and I got to drive myself to prison. That's not a fun drive. I had a couple cigars on the way there, so it made it kind of tolerable, right, I guess. But so I get there and I kiss my wife goodbye, and I don't know what's going to happen, right? People die in prison. There's lots of things that happen in prison where you might not come back out. I have no idea what to expect, no idea what's going to happen. So I kiss my wife goodbye. I tell her I love her, right? I got tears in my eyes. She's got tears in her eyes. My kids are at home going, what was happening with Dad, right? My kids aren't stupid. They know arrest Joe Biden, not my dad, right? My kids aren't stupid. They know exactly what's going on with everything. And so, you know, it's still hard on them. Very psychologically traumatizing for my wife, for my kids, even for myself. But I get into prison and, right, you got to take off all your clothes. They give you their clothes. And the guy's like putting them in his box. And he's like, what's your address? Write your address on this. We'll send it to your house. And he's like, how long are you here for? I'm like, 60 days. He's like, oh, you mean 60 months? I said, nah, 60 days. He's like, what? You're here for 60 days? For what? I said, January 6th. He says, oh, I'll put this in our closet. You can get this when you're done. Like, that guy voted for Trump for sure, right? But anyways, they stick me in general population, right? You get surrounded by all these people, and they want to know, you know, they want to know if you're a sex offender or if you're a snitch. And that's the two things that they surround you and ask you. And so I'm like, J6er. They're like, oh, you were in Washington, D.C. on January 6th. And one guy in the back, he's like, yeah, maybe Trump 2024. I'm like, okay, all right, this might not be too bad, I guess, right? The conditions there were terrible, right? There was water everywhere in my cell. You know, it's not a place you want to go. The conditions are bad. It's not a good thing. You know, being that I was a J6er there was two other J6ers I got to meet very, very briefly or whatever, but, you know, I didn't really, you know, I didn't have a lot of opposition that was there. There's some people, like the guy that I shared a cell with, right? We're in a room about as big as that table over there together, and he was a pro-Putin Ukrainian, all right? And he hated Donald Trump. And so he called me Trump, and I called him Putin. And that's just how it worked, right? And so we'd have like these little headbutting things, you know, where it was wild, right? But you know, nonetheless, you know, I made it through the 60 days. I was reunited with my family. I found out that my not my youngest son, but my second youngest son would tell people in our church, "Oh, my dad's dead. My dad died." Right, and so that was something that he had to deal with. It was hard for my whole family, my wife and everybody. But here's the thing: is that it also made me stronger, because one of the 4 cardinal virtues is fortitude, and you have to live through difficult times and difficult things in order to build strength inside of yourself. We have to live through all these hard times as a country in order to build strength in those of us that love what America stands for. And that's exactly what's happening. And I experienced it. And yes, it was hard. Yes, it was wrong. But it did make me stronger as a person as well. Yes, it's still challenging. But I look to find the things that can make me sharper, stronger, and better through all of those things that I had to go through. So that's one good thing that came out of it, right? And you know, there's a time in our country where, you know, we've all lived through seeing this, and you guys are still living through the weaponization of the state government. And, you know, I don't know what it looks like for you guys at the end of the road here. This room is here in support, and there's a lot of other people that are out there silently in support. And, you know, I feel helpless. You know, Kevin, thank you for standing up for, you know, the people that need it right now in our state, and it's an unpopular thing. to some
My
people.
pleasure, my honor to do so.
Absolutely, right? And that's the thing, is that warriors are judged by how they fight when the battle happens, not what they say about the battle after the battle happens. And so those of us that are willing to stand and fight when it actually matters are the ones that are going to lead us to a brighter future. Because it's always easy to say, oh, here's what I would have done. Here's what I could have done. If that happens again, you better believe that I'm going to, okay, whatever. But there's some of us that are willing to stand and fight when it matters most. And so I know there's a lot of us in the room that are willing to do that as well. And so I applaud you guys for that. I applaud everybody for being here tonight. So many familiar faces, right? Jeanette, how's it going? And thank you guys for all the support that you guys gave me when I ran for governor. And a lot of people ask me, am I going to run again? You know, I got the whole J6 story. No one in the state of Michigan has a story like I have and had to live through what I lived through. The federal government was weaponized against me and threw me in prison because of what I said during a gubernatorial campaign. But I also have a lot of little kids and I love being dad. And it's a huge commitment. And so there's a lot of prayer that needs to go there. So just pray for discernment. But don't pray for me to run or for any one particular person. Pray for God to bring us to a better place, whoever that is. I want to support the outcome of our state and our country being better, more so than me or whoever the one person might be. We have to do all this stuff together, guys. So, you know, we love you guys. Thank you for standing up for Trump. You know, it was hard, but it was the right thing to do at the right time. So we applaud you guys, and thank you guys so much for being here tonight. If there's a couple of questions, go ahead.
So, did you lose your firearm privileges?
See, people don't know. There's a perfect example. People don't know. They wanted to scare everybody. The answer is no to that question. They never even took my firearms, right? I had to give them up for a short period of time. But no, I did not lose that right. And I was pardoned by Donald Trump as well, right? I was pardoned by Trump. So supervised release ended 4 days after I was pardoned. So I got off early. Yes. Go ahead.
I'm just curious, stormtroopers that came and got you, my sons were in the military. Uniform Court of Military Justice says that you don't follow an illegal order. Now those FBI agents had to know that the charges against you were trumped up. They had to know they were breaking their oath of office. Will there be, I'm so tired of hearing about all the wonderful people in the FBI because of people like you that went through this situation. Same thing with the Justice Department. People prosecuted you, obviously broke their oath of office. Is there any justice for these people?
That's a great question. Oh, wow. Let me start off by saying that the agents that were at my house that day, they absolutely knew that what they were doing was absolute bullshit. They knew it, you know, they knew it. They had to, I was just talking to Randy about this, that, you know, he'd been there for 26 years or whatever, and man, I got to get to my 30 years. I got to do as my, you know, DC employer tells me to do, right? So there's a lot of these people that are doing it just following what the orders are given, right? And that's the whole thing when we just talked about doing the right thing at the right time, having the courage to say, you know what, that's not right. Why would I go arrest the leading gubernatorial candidate in the state of Michigan for a misdemeanor trespassing charge? Are you kidding me right now, right? But that courage doesn't exist necessarily in all the types of people that you're talking about there, right? And as far as restorative justice, I can tell you this. So the McCloskey and the Tickton law firms right now are working on something, and this is all, you can search it online and find some of the stuff. I'm working with them now, and we're talking about bringing some claims and some other things that might be able to help compensate some of the J6ers for a lot of the things that they lost, compensatory damages. Some people's lives were ruined, right? In a lot of ways, mine was too. My business was affected very negatively, still to this day is. I'm a real estate broker. And, you know, some people love me. Absolutely, some people love me. Other people, when they find out who I am, they disappear real quick, right? And so, yeah, it's taken a lot of money out of my pocket, right? And so, as far as holding the people accountable, I mean, that's a whole different thing. And there's a lot of government immunity that goes along with this, right? It's very difficult, very expensive. You know, I don't know what the answer is to that for sure. And it's a sad situation for our country because, yes, especially on the left, right? Which, although what Cash is doing, if you read Cash's book, Government Gangsters, man, I sure hope that that guy that wrote that book is actually who the director of the FBI is right now, because we might be in for a treat these next coming years. But, you know, it doesn't look like there's even any accountability coming for any of those people there, although there was a lot of the U.S. attorneys that were in the DOJ that have all been fired from their jobs. So, I mean, there's small components of it there, but, you know, I think the shoe needs to continue to be on the other foot, and we need to be willing to put a little bit of pressure back, if you will. And so, you know, maybe you guys end up running for office for something too, and, you know, maybe we get a new attorney general that wants to decide to actually investigate crime and go after the people that need to be investigated.
It's going to happen.
All right, a couple more questions here real quick. We've got a few more minutes here. Go ahead, Kevin.
Really quickly, I know that you did a nice thing with, I think, Kevin Rinke and Gary Soldano, and that was broadcasted. Any news about what you guys are thinking about regarding the gubernatorial race? You guys going to partner up? Any things to share? If not, okay, but I'm just kind of curious.
Sure. Oh boy, right? Can't tell the live stream, right? So yeah, Kevin Rinke, Garrett Soldano, and I, we've been talking quite a bit, you know, over the last several months. You know, I've got to know Kevin better. You know, we've enjoyed some dinners together and some other things and have chatted about a few things. I can tell you this much, and I said this at that event, because somebody brought up the fact, like, oh, you know, I see Kevin here trying to gain support from you guys, da-da-da. And I said, look, you know, Kevin's not the choice that, if you call it the powers to be, want to be the governor, right? Kevin can write a check himself to be that guy too. And we know where the $5 million went. And I won't go off into that topic. Maybe at some point I will. I would love to debate John on the stage, though, I'll tell you that much. But we'll probably do more events with each other. We do have some other stuff planned that we've been talking about. And that was a 3-hour unscripted. I love unscripted. I didn't plan any of this, right? I'm on my way over here like, what am I going to talk about tonight, right? You know, I just grabbed the microphone and started talking. That's exactly what we did on those 3 hours there. We just grabbed the microphone. We started, ask us any questions you want. And so we have a couple that are going to happen again in the near future. And as far as the answer to your other question, I don't know if Kevin's going to run or not. I'm not sure if I'm going to run or not. I can tell you this, Kevin and I have agreed we won't run against each other. But, you know, there's some options out there that, you know, we'll see what the future holds and what direction God guides us. And, you know, if something were to be decided in that aspect, we're going to do it to win, and we will win. Yeah. All right, we got time for 1 or 2 more questions here real quick. Go ahead.
Can you talk to the prison system, your experience? Our prison system.
Sure. Yeah. Anything more specific?
I don't know. How bad was it? What's it like? You know, tell us.
What's it like?
Tell us. You know, what do you need to know about our American prison system?
Lots of illegal immigrants in them. That was at the facility that I was at. There was, you know, most people spoke Spanish. And I didn't know their stories. I didn't really want to know their stories, right? A couple of people told me their stories. I mean, a lot of meth dealers in there, a lot of cocaine dealers, you know, some different financial crimes, you know, fentanyl, that kind of stuff. So there was a lot of those guys that were in Oxford with me there. You know, you have a library that you can go to get any books. I read a ton of books when I was in there. I needed to pass the time. And, you know, it's a prison. I mean, the rooms are small. It's all made of concrete. I mean, you get to come out when they allow you to come out. Like, that bed that they give you is like, you know those, like, those pool rafts that they have, right? Imagine one that's, like, partially deflated, right? Have a good night's sleep, right? And you don't get a pillow. and they kept shutting the heat off on us, and it was in the middle of the winter when I was there too, because they locked me up for Christmas, they locked me up for New Year's Eve, they locked me up for New Year's Day, they locked me up for my son's birthday, and it was very cold in northern Wisconsin, and they would shut the heat off on us, right? And it would get super freezing cold in there. So, I'm only speaking of just the one prison because they didn't move me around to a bunch of them or anything like that. The food wasn't terrible, but it wasn't good, right? I don't want to go that far. But when you're hungry, really anything kind of looks pretty good as well. So, yeah, here's an interesting story too. I would put on my headphones and I would just walk around, this room is way bigger than the room that they had like 150 people in, right? So you just kind of walk around, do your thing, I'm listening to my stuff or whatever, and one of the guards is like, hey, come here. So, if you don't do what the guards say, then, there could be bad outcomes for that because you have no rights in there at all, right? Whatever they say, you do, otherwise they throw you in solitary confinement, whatever it is. So I walked over to the guy, and he goes, Gretchen Whitmer sucks. And in my mind, I'm like, I totally agree with you, bro. But why are you saying that to me? He goes, I voted for you for governor. I'm like, oh, boy, right? And he's like, yeah, I work in the prison system. And he goes, I'm a Michigan resident, but they moved me all around. He goes, I voted for you. He's like, you don't belong in here. He's like, you belong in the governor's mansion in Michigan. So, yeah, that was just one of them, right? All of the guards weren't like that. A bunch of them were, think the opposite end of the spectrum of that, right? But that was the one incident with that guy there. But, yeah, it's a prison. I mean, you got they're constantly on you. They're constantly hounding you. They want to search you, right? What do you got on you? Pants, right? Luckily, I have pants and a jacket on me, right? But people do all kinds of weird things in prison, I guess. So hopefully that helps a little bit. Last question. Go ahead.
Have you ever loved able to send you some things like candy bars or cake or anything? Can you get anything from outside the prison from your family?
Yeah, great question. What's that? In the store. Yeah, there's a commissary. There's a very limited amount of items there that they have. So can you get things? So to the Michigan Conservative Coalition, thank you guys for all the letters that you guys did send. My wife did, because I didn't want any letters. That's just my attitude going into it. I said, no, I'm just going to go there, I'm going to focus, I'm going to do my 60 days. No letters. I told my wife I wasn't even going to call her, right? Well, that didn't last very long, right? But hey, babe, I miss you, right? You probably miss me too, huh? Right? So I got a lot of letters. So thank you guys for the ones that did send letters. And I did write a letter, a thank you letter back to everybody that I could read where it came from. A lot of it, because they photocopy all of it. Right? Because, maybe somebody puts drugs in it or something like that. So you just get photocopies and it's like, did you have your kindergartner photocopy that? Like, what is this thing, right? Like half of it cut off or whatnot. But I got so many letters from people that they're like, Kelly, and then they hand me this stack. They're like, why are you getting so many letters? I'm like, I have no idea. I don't know, right? I didn't tell anybody in there that I was a gubernatorial candidate. I didn't tell anybody. There was this one guy that was on drugs that he kept saying, you look so familiar to me, man. I've seen you on Fox News before. I'm like, I have no idea. I don't know. Maybe they ran a special on me or something like that. Right? I can't put my finger on it. But you can't get any candy bars. You can't get any food, anything like that. Some people sent me some books. So if you go to Amazon or some retailer and you had the inmate's address that it comes from Amazon or Barnes & Noble or whatever, they'll give you the actual book. But I got a ton of letters, so thank you guys for writing those because, after you're in there for a while, and I was only in there for 60 days. The Putin was in there for 12 years, right? And there was other guys that were in there for that long too. I talked with one guy who was finally going to get out. He's like, I've been here for 22 years. I'm like, what'd you do? I forget what it was, but I'm just like, 22 years for that? Like, holy smokes, right? That's the story there. I wasn't able to visit with anybody, but I didn't want to have any visitors. I didn't want my kids to come visit me there. But anytime I did call and talk with my kids, positive mental attitude, right? How you doing, Dad? I'm doing fantastic. Looking around going, oh, I'm in that prison that you're talking about, right? But I wanted my kids to be able to maintain a positive mental attitude through having their dad go through that experience as much as I could. It's hard for them, but I wanted to try to be the one that can lead the family and say, hey, this is tough, but God makes us stronger through doing things like this, right? We don't always know the reasons why, but we can know the reasons that we want a better outcome. So anyways, thank you guys very much for having me out here tonight. Stay strong, stay supporting you guys. God bless. Thank you, guys. Thank you. I have to leave. I have to leave very early in the morning tomorrow. I gotta be up super early, so I'm not gonna be able to stick around. You guys know I love sticking around and hanging out at events. So I'll stick around if there's anybody that wants to chat for a quick second or whatnot. But I do have to leave and head back to Grand Rapids. So just wanted to let everybody know I'm not just talking and running. Thank you.
Thank you so much for making this record. So, I imagine the other victims here felt like I did when I was first charged with 8 felonies. I described it at the time as feeling like I imagined what it would feel like if a doctor told me they discovered I had a horrible disease. For many of us charged, we didn't know what our futures were going to hold. It could end up very, very badly for us. However, there was one difference that made this situation very different from a cancer diagnosis, let's say. Instead of getting support from some of your closest friends and relatives, some of us were shunned by those people who we thought knew us and trusted us and loved us. Additionally, however, unlike someone who was diagnosed with a serious illness, most people have some form or another of health insurance to pay for them to get through the treatment. For people that are suffering from lawfare, we don't have anything like that. So we're wondering, besides the fact, are we going to be found not guilty? When is this going to end? Is this going to bankrupt us? So it's something else that you have to worry about that, you just never even crosses your mind until you become a victim. I've known Robert Muise, co-founder of the American Freedom Law Center, for a few years now, well before I actually needed him, because he is now defending me in my civil lawsuit. Besides the criminal lawsuit, we're being sued by Biden electors. During a visit, and he has spoken at Lake Zurich Tea Party 2 or 3 times, and his last time there was in August of this past 2024, and I had brought up to him, Rob, you know what? 50% of Americans really need some form of catastrophic lawfare insurance to protect us against rogue government attorney generals and prosecutors who really just want to put you in prison because you are opposing their point of view. To which Rob replied, that is what the American Freedom Law Center is. Now think about that. It's like here we have a law center who actually spends a good portion of their time defending many victims who can't afford to be the representation. Unfortunately, we have a government that can destroy anyone's life by making bogus charges and with the sole intention of financially just crushing them. Since 2000, Robert Muise has been dedicated to using his law practice to defend religious liberties, freedom of speech, right to life issues in federal and appellate courts across our country. Robert's here tonight. He's going to discuss how the left is abusing the power of the government to weaponize law in order to suppress political opposition. The American Freedom Law Center is a nonprofit, public interest law firm that's fighting this tyrannical abuse of government power in federal and state courts around the country. AFCL provides the legal services pro bono and must rely upon tax-deductible donations to support this important work. So joining us tonight is lawfare fighter, Marine Robert Muise. Is PowerPoint? Okay.
Thank you for that kind introduction. Boy, it's going to be hard to follow Ryan. You know, he's explaining what it was like to be in prison. I was thinking back to my 9 months on an LST during that first Gulf War. Sounded pretty similar to what he went through as being a Marine infantry officer. Well, thank you, Marianne, for inviting me here tonight. Still not going. Technical difficulties. Live and die by. There we go. So American Freedom Law Center, our tagline is fighting for faith and freedom. We're a nonprofit public interest law firm. It was founded 13 years ago, although I've been doing this type of litigation for 25 years. It was founded 13 years ago by my colleague and I, David Yerushalmi, who's an Orthodox Jew. I'm the Catholic guy here in Michigan with 12 kids. And as I like to say, they're all boys except for 10. So blessed are you among women in my household. So we just we're expecting our 22nd grandchild here in July. So God's been good. You know, I was a Marine for 13 years. My dad was in the Marine Corps, 2 other brothers in the Marine Corps. That's all I ever wanted to do in my life was to be a Marine. I was a Marine officer. I was an infantry officer. And then I realized about 10 years into my Marine Corps career that I was less concerned about the enemies in the Soviet Union or North Korea as I was about our domestic enemies. Right? I took an oath of office as a Marine officer to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And I was more concerned about our domestic enemies, especially those who are using our court system to destroy our freedoms. Right? You think about all the freedoms that we've lost over these years, and even what we're seeing now. Right, this rogue third branch of government who's interfering with the powers of the executive branch. The judiciary is where the battle's being fought. I remember coming home and telling my wife, I'm going to go to law school. It's like, what? It's like, yeah, I'm going to law school. And I went to Notre Dame. I got my law degree. I was Amy Coney Barrett and I were classmates. We're on law review together. She's been a disappointment, I got to say. I haven't been totally thrilled with that. I'm going to have to talk to Amy. What's going on. But, and no offense to my lawyer friends here, but I'm not a big fan of lawyers. I usually don't describe myself as a lawyer. I'd rather describe myself as a Marine with a law degree. And that's how I approach what we're doing, because this is lawfare. Right? There's no question about it. I never grow tired of this quote from Ronald Reagan. Right? Freedom isn't just handed down through the bloodstream. It must be fought for and protected so we can hand it off to our kids. Right? If we don't fight for these freedoms, they're like exercising your muscles, right? They're going to atrophy. We got to fight. It's the bottom line. And you know, our biggest threat right now is government. It has been government. Hopefully, with this, this change of the guard, we're going to see it going in a different direction. But the weaponization of government and lawfare has to stop. First case, I got several cases I just want to talk to you about so you can see what's actually what's going on. And this is just a small sampling of the cases we're handling. And as Marion mentioned, we handle all our cases pro bono. So we don't charge a penny for our legal services. So I've been doing this for 25 years. I've literally have argued cases from the Supreme Court in Massachusetts to federal court out in Honolulu, Hawaii. I've got cases in Idaho. I've got cases in Ohio. I've got plenty of cases here in Michigan. We're all over the country. This case, the so-called Michigan fake electors case, right? This is as Marion mentioned, they're being prosecuted criminally for creating basically an alternate slate of electors, but they've also been sued civilly by several Biden electors. It's my privilege. I'm representing Marion, Amy, Rose, and Hank, and I know Amy's here tonight, and obviously Marion's here, but I guess Hank and Rose couldn't make it tonight. Just give you an idea. If I ever brought this lawsuit, I'd be disbarred. Never mind being kicked out on a frivolous lawsuit. I just know these are the claims that they're bringing. Remember, they created this alternate slate of electors at the direction of attorneys, by the way, who said, we have all this litigation going on. If they prevail in these litigation, we have to have an alternate slate of electors ready to go to present to Congress so we can elect the person who actually won the Michigan election, and that being Donald Trump. Here's the claims. The first one. They want a declaration. It's called a declaratory relief. They want a declaration from this court that, we were actually the real electors. We have this principle of law in the courts that courts don't engage in advisory opinions. Right? By the time they filed this lawsuit, their ballots were already counted, the Electoral College already voted, and Biden was already the president. There was nothing for them to get a declaration on that they're, because they want their feelings, they want to feel good, have good feelings that the court said, yeah, we are in fact the real electors. Your election, your votes counted, your guy's president of the United States. There's no basis for any court to intervene on that. They claimed that it was an invasion of privacy and false light. By submitting this alternate slate of electors, they were somehow implying that the other electors were false electors and were doing something wrong, so that's casting them in a false light. I mean, it's absolutely absurd that this would somehow be a tort. It has to be, publicly proclaimed, and it has to be something that would be objectionable or intrude upon some issue of privacy. When you're an elector, that's a public office, right? There's no invasion of privacy because they created an alternate slate of electors. I mean, it's absolutely that absurd. You don't have to be a lawyer to see how absurd that was. Conversion. It's even getting worse. They said on conversion, they said, well, by just preparing these alternate slate of electors, you tried to convert property that we owned. But what property do you own? You don't have any property rights in a public office. I mean, there's a legion of cases that make that particular point. These are the claims, and then they threw in a conspiracy at the end. Right? Well, in order to have a conspiracy, you have to conspire to do something wrong. These claims are so patently frivolous. We have pending a motion for summary disposition and for a request for attorney's fees. When we argued that case in February, I think, somewhere around there, and we're still waiting for the judge. I mean, this thing should be over. Should have been over, a year ago. This is what we're dealing with, and they can get away with this. And the judge in Grand Rapids, Kent County, is allowing this to proceed. I mean, this thing, the decision needs to come down right now and get rid of it. It's absurd. Michigan, we need to replace this lady pretty quick, and I tell you, that guy's got my vote. And I'm not speaking as AFLC, I'm speaking as Robert Davis, Marine. I'm voting for this guy. We have a lawsuit against the Attorney General, Dana Nessel. We filed it in 2019. We filed it on behalf of, this is how long this stuff takes.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. We had we had a motion for summary judgment that has been pending for 4 years. And every year on the anniversary, I'd file a notice with federal court, a conservative judge. I'd file a notice every year, notice of pending action. Finally, after notice of pending action for 4 years, he's like, okay, let's have oral argument on June 2nd. So I argued this case last Monday before the judge. We sued Dana Nessel. I got a call one day in February of 2019 from the Detroit News. And the Detroit News said, so do you have a response to Dana Nessel's public proclamation that she's going to go after every one of those hate organizations in Michigan, designated a hate organization by the Southern Poverty Law Center, since we're top on the list of that list by the Southern Poverty Law Center. I said, oh, she is? I went and took a look at what she said. She said she's gonna shut us down. She's gonna come after us. All the word tackle, go after, investigate. And so I said, I'll tell you how I'm gonna respond. I sued her. And so we sued her about a week later. And the judge we had, they filed a motion to dismiss, and he denied their motion, wrote a great opinion. I mean, it was a fantastic opinion. We went through a year of discovery, filed then our motion for summary judgment. I showed up for court, waiting 4 years to argue this thing. I show up in court, it's like, this judge was the most hostile judge. I'm like, who is this guy? I had to quote him back from his own opinion, saying, Judge, you even said this opinion, if these allegations are proven, then we should get the relief requested. Well, guess what? We proved those allegations. Here's the deposition testimony, here's the exhibits, we went through it all. There's a dirty little secret that probably most people don't know, and this is particularly the case with federal judges. They have a turnover of law clerks. I've seen this isn't the first time this happened to me, where you get an opinion, an early opinion on a motion to dismiss. The law clerks do a lot of the writing for the judges. And then all of a sudden, 2 years later or so, they change over the law clerks, and you get somebody that doesn't like what you're arguing, and everything just changes, like a switch. And it was shocking. I mean, I was fully expecting to be all over the Attorney General. Even with their main witness, their 30B6 witness, not to get into the weeds, who was testifying on behalf of the Attorney General's office, I mean, she lied straight up. She testified in a deposition, I took her deposition, that, oh, the hate crimes organization does not investigate organizations, only individuals. So I had to pull out an affidavit that she did 2 years earlier when Church Militant, who was on the Southern Poverty Law Center's list, was being investigated by the hate crimes unit, and she said in there, we can't turn over the information about Church Militant because you're under investigation, so we're going to exercise a law enforcement exception. But they don't investigate organizations, but yeah, they do investigate organizations. It's crazy. You know what? And I tell my clients this all the time. And quite often in the district court, especially here in Michigan, I say you got to hold your nose and wait till we get up to the Sixth Circuit. I have far more success in courts of appeals in these cases. But I tell them, you know what? The way you stand up to a bully is you got to punch him in the face, right? And sometimes you don't necessarily win because you got to rely on the judge to make the decision, the right decision. And my wife, she's like, you're always such an eternal optimist. I was like, yeah, every case I file because I should win it. But we don't. And that's because the judges don't know the law. It's just the way it goes. These things are political. If it's just blind justice, what's all this issues with these confirmation hearings for these federal judges in the Supreme Court, right? If it's just a matter of are they qualified? Of course not. They're political appointees for a reason. Right? We see it. How many times you say, well, is it a Trump judge or is it an Obama judge? You can figure out who appointed them, and you probably have an 80% chance of resolving what the case is, particularly the types of cases that I bring. But sometimes you just punch the bully in the face and they stop. Right? And so that's what I tell my clients. Sometimes we may not necessarily win this little battle, but we're going to win the war because we're going to make them bleed for doing the stuff that they're doing to you. Right? So we fight back, and we fight back hard. There's another case. This one was actually out of Ohio. Red Rose Rescue is a pro-life organization here in Michigan, but they do things across the country. Monica Miller, who was supposed to come here tonight, I was hoping she would. She runs the Citizens for a Pro-Life Society. This was a case brought by Merrick Garland in his Attorney General's office. It was involving these Red Rose Rescuers. They're pro-lifers. They did a peaceful trespass at an abortion center in the Northern District of Ohio. They were prosecuted for simple trespass. It was like a civil offense back in 2021. And Merrick Garland waited right up to the end of the statute of limitations to file this civil lawsuit under the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act against these pro-lifers in the Northern District of Ohio 3 years later. Why did he choose 2024? Go figure, right? It's an election year. He wanted to show his base, look, we're tough on these pro-lifers. He realized that this was such a bogus, weak case that he only brought it civilly, because he wouldn't have to try to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt on the criminal would have been ridiculous. Basically, several pro-lifers walked into an abortion center and kneeled down and prayed, and that was it. On their face, even the civil and criminal elements are the same. You have to use force, threat of force, or intimidation. Nothing. They were sitting there praying. And then they left when the police brought them out, and that was the end of it. And yet he comes after them civilly. I represented Father Fidelis Moshinsky in this particular case, a Catholic priest who's a true hero. He was also arrested criminally for FACE. All of these, every one of the defendants in this case, civilly, they were also involved in criminal ones. They were all pardoned by President Trump. And then President Trump directed his Department of Justice to dismiss this civil lawsuit against all the pro-lifers. One little interesting caveat, though, is I don't like being on the defensive. I like attack, attack, attack. I always go on the offensive as much as I can. So when I answer their complaint, I filed counterclaims against Merrick Garland for abusing his office and targeting pro-lifers. I told the Trump administration, all right, I'll dismiss my counterclaims, but I want my attorney's fees. And so they paid me $12,000, and we ended up this case ended up going away. But we have to be on the offensive all the time. Here's another one with these pro-lifers. We sued the New York Attorney General, Letitia James. Is she a piece of work or what? Oh my gosh. But of course we have to sue her in New York, so we have everything working against us. She sued a bunch of pro-lifers under the New York FACE Act and the Federal FACE Act, because attorneys general have the authority to bring a federal lawsuit against several pro-lifers. Same thing, simple trespass, but wants to make it something bigger. In fact, there was a civil lawsuit. She was asking for a 30-foot injunction, which is like absurd. A 30-foot injunction, it's like you have trespass laws that cover it. But she was just making a political point. So she held this big dog and pony press conference with Planned Parenthood and all the others up there on the dais with her. And while she was up there, she said, this Red Rose Rescue organization is a terrorist organization. And everybody who's associated with it are terrorists. It's a civil claim. No allegations of terrorism, no criminal allegations, violent criminal allegations, because that's not what they do. And so we sued her federally. We sued her for defamation under state law, and we sued her federally for violating their rights of expressive association. Right? Because what was the point of this? It was very clear. She wanted to demonize this group so people would be afraid to associate with them, people afraid to join with them. And there's a case, Muise versus King in the Supreme Court. There's a very good case out of the Sixth Circuit, the Parsons case, where it makes clear that this type of vilification, attack, this reputational harm can not only be a defamation problem, but also a violation of the First Amendment. And of course, we're in federal court in New York, and in New York, right, of all places, for terrorists. And they have a pretty harsh statute that makes the point that terrorism was one of the most heinous crimes. Well, defamation, per se, is accusing somebody of a heinous crime. And here you have the state attorneys general, right, the highest law enforcement officer of the state, declaring them terrorists and terrorist organizations. And what did the federal court say? And then the Court of Appeals affirmed it. Oh, that's just political hyperbole. Political hyperbole. Right? You have the government going out of their way to do this. Right? Doing it at a press conference. And why did she say? Because she said they terrorize patients, call them terrorists, and belonging to a terrorist organization. So we're preparing a petition to the U.S. Supreme Court, because it's totally contrary to the Muise versus King case, because they said, oh, there's no standing, because this is just political hyperbole. There was no reputational harm. Calling somebody a terrorist and belonging to a terrorist organization. Here's a little thought exercise. Can you imagine if this was like a Muslim group like CARE? Yeah, you'd think for a second they would be bending over backwards to find that this is the most heinous, appellation you can give, or designation you can give to this organization. But because they're pro-lifers, of course, all the judges probably thought they were terrorists and belonging to a terrorist organization anyways. All right, it's the last case I'm going to talk about. Andy Hess is here. That's Andy. This is one of the most egregious cases I've witnessed in my 25 years doing litigation. This started off criminally. Right now it's in civil court, in federal district court. We sued them civilly. Andy was at the December 15th, 2023 election recount in Oakland County. He was one of the observers. He made multiple objections to the way that it was being handled. There wasn't a chain of custody for these ballots that they're recounting. He was complaining about it. They kept blowing him off. So Andy, and the picture you have here, and because I'm going to paint this story here, this is after the alleged terrorist threat, when he came back into this recount room to give a speech where he expressed his political opinion, no question of political opinion, that if you cheat on an election, you should be prosecuted for treason. So there was a secretary who apparently heard Andy walk out of the recount room into what was essentially an empty lobby, making the offhand comment, "Hang Joe for treason." Joe Rozelle is the head of elections for Oakland County. Again, it was overheard by his secretary, and he was allowed to return to the recount room. So he comes out in the hallway, makes an offhand comment, even during the testimony at the preliminary examination. They made it clear that it was a conversational tone. She wasn't part of this conversation. She just happened to overhear it when he walked out into this empty lobby. So for that, the Oakland County prosecutor prosecuted him with making a terrorist threat. A 20-year felony. A 20-year felony. This is what's required to make a terrorist threat. It has to be a serious expression of an intent to commit an act of terrorism. You have to have a serious expression of intent to commit an act of terrorism. You're in an empty lobby, walking out, no election officials around, overheard by a secretary who's not even part of this conversation. And what is an act of terrorism? You have to intend to intimidate or coerce a civilian population, or coerce or affect the conduct of government. Excuse the French, but if that's an act of terrorism, Andy sucks as a terrorist. There's no election officials, no even any government officials in this empty lobby. So the secretary, she goes on to make a complaint to the sheriff's department. The deputy sheriff there comes out and asks Andy to step out and asks him, "Did you threaten Joe Rozelle's life?" And Andy laughs, like, "No. If at best, I accuse him of a crime." To take down his statements, we have it all on the video. And then, do they arrest him? Do they call the SWAT teams? Do they, bring reinforcements? Because, hey, we got a terrorist here. Does he come out and commit an act of terrorism? No. Go back into the recount room with Joe Rozelle and give you a speech, which he does. And if you look at that picture, see, the deputies are really concerned about this guy, being a terrorist threat. We chuckle. For a year, he was under this prosecution. He would tell me his wife would wake up crying in the morning because she had a nightmare that her husband was being dragged off to jail for 20 years. This is the Oakland County prosecutor. Joe Rozelle, this is all part of the scheme. In January of 2024, before he was charged, he wasn't charged until April, he went on CBS News and he gave an interview. He said, they were upset that we were advising the board how to conduct the recount in accordance with the statute, and this individual didn't like that, and so he said that he was going to hang me. This is what Joe Rozelle tells the public. Here's Joe Rozelle when I was cross-examining him during the preliminary examination. "Sir, Mr. Hess never told you directly he was going to hang you." "Correct, correct." "So those words were never personally communicated to you by Mr. Hess at any time." "Correct." "Mr. Hess never communicated to you the words, quote, 'hang Joe for treason.'" "Correct." "And at no time in the election recount room with you and the other election officials did Mr. Hess state, quote, 'hang Joe for treason.' Is that correct?" "Not that I recall." "Correct." "Okay, at no time in the election recount room with you and the other election officials did Mr. Hess state, quote, 'I'm going to hang Joe Rozelle,' end quote." "Correct." "Correct." "At no time on the election recount room with you and the other election officials did Mr. Hess state that he was going to hang anyone." "Not that I heard." And here's Mrs. Howard, the lady who was the receptionist, who was all put out by overhearing this comment. So after hearing this statement and the response, here's the question. "What did you do?" Here's her answer. "Immediately, not much. I couldn't leave my position at the front desk. I was the only one guarding it, so I had to wait a little bit until I was able to go out into the lobby and find a deputy or somebody I could report it to." So I asked her, "So you actually waited a period of time before you even made the report to law enforcement?" "Correct." "So you didn't perceive any imminent threat at that point?" "Correct." "No, no threat." And then even after this preliminary examination, I go to the prosecutor. I was like, "So when are you going to dismiss this thing?" "Nope." McDonald wouldn't dismiss it. Kept pursuing. I told the prosecutor, I said, I'll tell you what, let's take this case to trial. And if I win, you go to jail. And he said, well, I didn't do anything wrong. I said, well, neither did my client. So of all things, while we're in the course of, our district court judge bound this over. It's like, where's the probable cause for this? It was absurd. She bound it over. We filed a motion to dismiss at the circuit court to quash the bind over. The judge didn't want to dismiss it for some reason. She remanded it so I could present more evidence, more testimony. It's like, hold on, this is their burden. I don't have a burden to do anything. I could sit there on my hands the whole time. They're the ones that have to demonstrate. Why are you remanding it for me to put testimony on? Unbelievable. Well, while this was in the process of remand, the Michigan Court of Appeals in February, I think it was February 13th, they held the statute unconstitutional. And so they struck it down. We immediately filed a motion to dismiss. They didn't want to dismiss, they just wanted to stay. Our district court judge didn't want anything to do with this case, so she dismissed it. And 5 days later, I sued them civilly. And we've got a preliminary injunction motion that's pending. Unbelievable. It just gives you the idea. And I think, the prosecutor, look, let's put some skin in the game here. If I win this thing, I want you to go to jail. If it's such, this is such a great case. You have such a great case against Andy for this nonsense. A 20-year felony for a year. He was under a PR bond. Thankfully, he wasn't in pretrial confinement. But he had to surrender all his weapons. Had to turn in his CPL. He couldn't travel out of the state. It's absurd. He tried during Christmas. He tried to get some extra money, work for an Uber type thing. They did a background check, and this felony charge came up, and he couldn't get a job. These things have consequences. Not to mention, his wife having nightmares, throughout the night that her husband's going to be put in jail. We need new prosecutors. We need a new attorney general. We need new county prosecutors. Just have to. One other thing. This is a part of the same statute. Because the Michigan legislature was concerned that this statute would be used exactly the way it's being used against Andy, to prosecute speech. This is part of the same statute. Prosecuting agency shall not prosecute any person or seize any property for conduct presumptively protected by the First Amendment. It wasn't like there was gallows or ropes, or there was no imminent harm at all during that night. He was being prosecuted for pure speech. And the statute itself should have protected him. But nope, county prosecutor didn't care, and I can't seem to get a judge to read the law. Famous line from New York Times versus Sullivan, one of the premier First Amendment cases by the Supreme Court. It says, we consider this case against the background of profound national commitment to the principle that debate on public issues should be uninhibited, robust, wide open, and it may well include vehement, caustic, and sometimes unpleasantly sharp attacks on government and public officials. First Amendment allows for that. Right? And you heard Ryan up here about, really, he was prosecuted for his speech at the end of the day. Interesting story. I got a call from a buddy of mine who was a platoon sergeant of mine back when I was an infantry platoon commander, and he was there at January 6th. And they used to call me Bob in the Marine Corps. He's like, Bob, do you remember we used to say if an attack's going really well, it's an ambush? This thing's an ambush. Something's going wrong here. And he was telling me this as he was witnessing what was going on January 6th. We need to protect the right to freedom of speech, right? Our founding fathers and their genius, they gave us the First Amendment to peacefully revolt against our government, to speak our minds, to seek redress for grievances. And if that fails, which amendment comes next?
Second.
Yeah, for a reason. People always they hate to acknowledge the fact that, look, Second Amendment is, I'm a deer hunter, I love deer hunting, I love my guns, I need to protect my family. But our founding fathers understood that, sometimes things go really bad. And we need to have an armed citizenry, right? There's two things that tyrants always take away, right? The first thing they take away is speech, and they take away your guns.
That's right.
Right? And we need to defend those. We need to vote for people who can defend them. Thank you all for coming here. I know some of you have cards and things on your lap. If you can see it in your heart to support our work. Again, we're a 501c3. Everything we do, every case we take, we do it pro bono. And we have to rely on the generous donations of people who want to support us, who want to support our efforts to defend people like Marianne and Andy. There's Andy right there. Andy, stand up for a second with the hat on there. He's a fighter, and you know what? Fighters, they're gonna be targets. There's no doubt they're gonna be targets. So thank you all for coming, and I see one hand up.